When the Colorado Plateau was uplifted, there was actually thousands of feet of extra rock on top of the Grand Canyon that no longer exists today. That's all kind of dinosaur age Mesozoic rock that's still found up in Utah. But this area eroded away, and by around 5.5 million years ago, the Kaibab Plateau had kind of formed. Now, at that time, the mountains to the east, the Rockies, were continuing to rise. They were getting more rain, more moisture, and more snow. All that water began to roll downhill, and around 5.5 million years ago, the Colorado River began its current course from the Rockies over top of the Colorado Plateau and eventually on into the Gulf of California. Now, as the river came out of the mountains, it was bringing with it sediments. Those sediments would mix in with the river water to give it kind of this liquid sandpaper effect. And as gravity pulled that river water towards sea level, that liquid sandpaper would start to grind and carve into the Colorado Plateau. But sandpaper is not really enough to dig an entire Grand Canyon. We also need some jackhammers to help us excavate. Those jackhammers would come during seasonal floods. So when snow melts in the Rockies, it sends raging floods down the Colorado River. The floods are so big and powerful that they're not just picking up small sediments, they're picking up everything. And the river can pick up and transport rocks and boulders the size of cars and even houses. And as those massive boulders tumble their way down the river bottom, they're periodically hitting the Colorado Plateau, crushing and breaking apart other rocks. And those boulders would act like jackhammers that help the river dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the landscape. So for the past 5.5 million years, the Colorado River has been carving its way into the Colorado Plateau, exposing the rocks of the Grand Canyon, and a lot of that had to do with flooding events. However, the floods were never so big and voluminous as to fill up the entire Grand Canyon. So I don't want you to picture this all being submerged in water or the entire canyon, like a big lake. The river has variation in its flow, but today's Colorado River is actually about the same size, going on its same course as it has been for the past 5 million years. But once the river cuts down, well, now the walls of the Grand Canyon, they're exposed to things like rain and snow and freezing and thawing, and over time that erosion would start to widen away the canyon rim further and further away from the river edge. So the river cuts straight down and the canyon walls erode away from that edge. Now, as you look out into the Grand Canyon, one of the distinct things you'll see is this kind of stair-step looking structure. And that has to do with the different rates of erosion of different kinds of sedimentary rock. Sandstone and limestone are relatively hard compared to things like shale, mudstone, or siltstone. So the shale will erode away faster than the sandstone or the limestone. And what's going to happen is basically as that shale erodes away from underneath a harder layer, this little ledge is going to start to form. And over time, that ledge will get bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually that ledge is so overhanging, it's so undermined, it can't support its own weight anymore. One day it just breaks and falls into the Grand Canyon. When it breaks away, a sheer vertical cliff will be left behind. So as you look at the walls of the Grand Canyon, if you see a straight up and down cliff layer, you can know that's a layer of sandstone or a layer of limestone, whereas the more sloping angled layers are softer rocks like shale. And all of that erosion continues to widen out the Grand Canyon to this day, but that's what's giving it that kind of stair-step look that you see as you look across towards the North Rim.